I'm sure some of you guys think I am sharing this clip to make fun of Angel Reese and her inability to play basketball. Maybe you think this is going to be another video where we are mesmerized by Angel Reese attempting a behind-the-back pass, which somehow hits the backboard. But believe it or not, the pretend basketball is not the focal point of that clip. The real focal point, the real story, is the hundreds of empty seats at the local YMCA in Atlanta last night.
Angel Reese has officially turned this season into something nobody saw coming. Every time people think they have her figured out, she does something that makes the entire basketball world look twice. From the drama to the numbers, the confidence, and those moments that somehow become headlines before the game is even over, Reese has been impossible to ignore. But here's the real question. What exactly is happening with Angel Reese this season? And why does it feel like we are watching something completely different?
Angel Reese, disaster class layups and three-point shot attempts. Look, just stop shooting threes. Just stop shooting threes. I don't know what you're doing. Now, I will say before I start this, Angel Reese has been playing better lately. You've been playing well. Not knocking you, but hey, man, this blooper reel is crazy. It's crazy. We got to get into it. Nobody's showing up to these Angel Reese games in Atlanta. I could spot a nickel on the floor. It was about 12 and a half people, including the midget over there.
Somewhere on social media right now, a clip is making the rounds of Angel Reese attempting a no-look pass that finds absolutely nothing but hardwood. And if you clicked on this expecting another highlight reel built around her turnovers, you picked the wrong video.
Today, Angel Reese, folks, it must have been costume night yesterday in the ATL, because there was a sold-out arena, and about 60% of the people in attendance decided to dress up as empty seats. Angel Reese played in front of about 1,200 people. 1,200 people! Angel Reese is taking the WNBA back to the Stone Age by herself.
Because the funniest part of that footage has nothing to do with what happens on the court. The funniest part is everything happening around it. Because if you pause that clip and look past the players for a moment, studying the seats instead of the scoreboard, you notice something the highlight reel conveniently leaves out.
So it's give me freedom, give me fire, give me 20 points on 13 shots or I retire type game for pagebackers. But we may have seen the worst performance by a player I've ever seen today in Angel Reese. Like, this was real bad. I'm watching this game and I'm like, there's no way. There's just no way. And as the game kept going on, she just kept throwing the ball near the basket.
Row after row of them sit completely empty in a building that isn't even large enough to need that many rows to begin with. That gym is the Gateway Center Arena in College Park, Georgia, home of the Atlanta Dream, and it seats roughly 3,500 people for basketball, which makes it the smallest arena in the entire WNBA, smaller than plenty of high school gymnasiums scattered across the country.
At this point, I am starting to think that Angel Reese being in the WNBA is like a safety concern for her. Because I'm not sure why everybody got this pent-up aggression against her, but it's actually disgusting to watch. If you're unaware, Angel was playing in a game the other day, and one of the coaches called her a, quote, protected species. In the context of the game, a foul was made on a player that did something to Angel, and the coach was like, oh, she's a protected species because they're saying every time she plays, y'all call fouls on her.
On the night the Dream hosted the Phoenix Mercury this past week, a sizable chunk of those 3,500 seats sat completely untouched from tip-off to final buzzer. That alone would be a forgettable footnote buried inside a forgettable regular season game, except for one detail that turns it into something considerably funnier. For most of this year, the league and the franchise have both gone out of their way to insist that Angel Reese sells out buildings. That claim did not appear out of thin air, since Atlanta announced back in the spring that its season ticket memberships for the year were completely sold out, a genuine milestone for a franchise that spent most of the last 2 decades playing in front of a few thousand friends and family scattered across a mostly empty arena. So when a television camera pans across an arena that has technically been sold out since spring and finds hundreds of blue seats with nobody sitting in them, it is worth asking a pretty simple, pretty uncomfortable question. If Angel Reese is truly the reason people are tuning into women's basketball this season, why does she need an opponent to actually show up before that building looks full?
I'm here to talk to you about what I consider to be the greatest choke that I've ever seen in all of my years of watching and participating in sports.
The timing here makes the question even harder to shake, because just 2 nights before that sparsely attended Mercury game, the Dream played a completely different kind of home game, and the contrast is almost comedic. On August 3rd, Atlanta hosted the defending champion Las Vegas Aces at State Farm Arena downtown, the much larger building the Hawks normally call home, and the announced crowd topped 17,000 fans. That is a genuinely massive number for a regular season women's basketball game, especially one the Dream ended up losing by more than 20 points in front of all those people. What actually filled those 17,000 seats had very little to do with a jump shot or a highlight play, and everything to do with a doll. The event was branded Barbie Dream Night, built around the release of an actual Angel Reese branded Barbie that Mattel had unveiled a few weeks earlier at All-Star Weekend, and Atlanta rolled it out downtown with full theatrical force. The concourse featured a glitter bar so fans could get their hair done up for the occasion, the arena lighting went pink for the night, and fans arrived in tutus, magenta jerseys, and glittery boots like they were headed to a movie premiere rather than a basketball game.
According to the WNBA, Angel Reese has done it again! She's completely sold out another home game in Atlanta! This woman is amazing! Sellout? You expect me to believe that game was sold out?
Broadcast cameras spent almost as much time lingering on fans in the crowd holding the doll as they did on anything unfolding on the court below them. And by the time the final buzzer sounded on a 22-point loss, the doll had arguably had a better night than the team wearing her name across their chests. Judged purely as a marketing event, that night was an unqualified success. And there is a version of this story where a doll selling out an NBA-sized arena in a non-basketball market is genuinely impressive business. Judged as evidence that Angel Reese is single-handedly carrying the WNBA on her shoulders, though, it gets a lot shakier. Because the same cameras that found 17,000 people dressed head-to-toe in pink for a doll release found a noticeably thinner crowd 48 hours later once the towels, the glam bar, and the visiting champions had all gone home, and it was just the Dream playing ordinary regular season basketball in their actual building. None of this is entirely unfamiliar territory for Reese, who has spent years building a version of stardom that runs through merchandise, moments, and personality as much as it runs through box scores, and there is nothing inherently wrong with an athlete who understands her own brand that well.
Yesterday was bad on all fronts for the Atlanta Dream and the Phoenix Mercury. Bad on the nobody showed up front, and bad on the Angel Reese having an absolute disaster game. Good grief. You talk about brick Barbie. Wow.
The trouble starts when that brand gets pulled into an argument it was never really built to win. And this year, that argument has picked up a very specific label. The question of who actually deserves to be called the face of the WNBA. Reese herself has said more than once that she believes the title belongs to her, and this summer handed her 2 very different reasons to bring it up in public. The first was the Barbie release itself, which she has described as proof that years spent building an identity outside of basketball finally paid off. The second reason was far less flattering because when All-Star reserves were announced, Reese ended up as the only Atlanta player selected, and she was left off the starting lineup entirely despite a strong statistical case. That debate has spilled well past All-Star Weekend, and it gets louder every time somebody pulls up a box score instead of a highlight reel. The case for Reese is real and worth stating plainly, since she is a 2-time All-Star who has led the entire league in rebounding in every season she has played, a feat almost nobody in WNBA history can claim even once. The case against her is just as loud. Built around shooting percentages that still lag well behind most starting forwards, a turnover rate that spiked into genuinely alarming territory during the opening weeks of this season, and a half-court offensive game that even her supporters admit remains a work in progress.
I've yet to talk to one person who actually knows the game of basketball, who actually has credibility in the game of basketball, argue to me that Angel Reese just sucks at basketball, just doesn't belong. Some of you have try to say, and again, most of you are just trying to be mean-spirited. Some of you are out there saying like she has JV high school level basketball IQ. I am always going to counter with, what is your basketball IQ?
Depending on which corner of the discourse you wander into, Reese is either one of the most productive young players the sport has ever produced, or a marketing phenomenon whose actual on-court value gets wildly overstated by people who have never watched a full 40 minutes of Dream basketball. And the uncomfortable truth is that both of those camps are working from real numbers. They are just choosing to emphasize different ones. That underlying tension, whether Reese is genuinely the league's biggest draw or simply its loudest storyline, traces back to the trade that sent her to Atlanta in the first place. At one point telling a reporter she might need to consider a different direction if the organization did not turn things around. And the Sky, buried in a losing record with a locker room that looked exhausted by its own drama, seemed more than willing to let her walk in exchange for future draft capital. From the outside, it read like precisely the kind of trade Chicago fans could feel decent about. A chance to move past a talented but combustible situation while stockpiling assets for a rebuild that franchise badly needed to start.
Reese, come on, man. Come on, man. Take a look at this. Here we go. Uh-oh. This ain't Julia Tetchert bringing it up. Just throwing it up, missing it. All right. You threw the first one up and missed it. How about great effort by you to get the rebound? Can you kick it out now? Okay, let's throw it up. Boink, miss. Throw it out. Kick it out. You just keep throwing it up there, Angel. I mean, come on, man. Come on.
It helped, too, that Chicago's own season gave fans very little reason to second-guess the decision, since the Sky spent the summer buried near the bottom of the standings regardless of who was on the roster, which made it easy to frame the trade as addition by subtraction rather than a talent the front office simply gave away. For a stretch of this season, that read looked completely accurate. Reese opened the year piling up turnovers and shooting well below her usual percentages through the first few weeks, while the Dream themselves went cold in June, dropping 5 consecutive games and tumbling all the way down to 8th place in the standings. That Atlanta's summer slump had turned a lopsided trade back into something closer to a coin flip, and for a few weeks it genuinely felt like Chicago had won the deal by simply waiting it out. Then, almost on cue, Atlanta figured itself out. Reese settled into a more comfortable role once the Dream got a key rebounding partner back from injury. Her scoring and rebounding numbers climbed to career highs, and Atlanta strung together enough wins to climb back into playoff position, which is exactly the kind of development that keeps the entire worst trade in franchise history argument from being as tidy as it sounds on a thumbnail.
That's an open layup. Again, I don't really know what she's trying to do here in these scenarios. That's a really good take. But obviously got swatted. And again, at least that generated points. That's not the worst play in the world. But the second half was horrendous. It was horrendous. She's just going right into Shakira Austin, who's swatting the shit out of her. She got swatted by Sonia Citron at one stage. She is getting swatted by players 3, 4, 5 inches smaller than her.
Reese herself has leaned hard into that redemption story, telling reporters this is the freest she has felt in 3 years and crediting the culture inside the Atlanta locker room for lifting a weight off her shoulders that Chicago never managed to lift. It is genuinely difficult to argue with a player putting up all-star numbers on a team fighting for playoff seeding, and fair coverage of this trade has to hold both of those realities at once, the rocky start and the recent surge, without pretending either one cancels the other out completely. Maybe the honest verdict here is not that the trade was some historic disaster, and maybe it is not that Reese has quietly become a worse basketball player than the rookie who once led the entire league in rebounding. Maybe the real story is that the modern WNBA has built an entire economy around the assumption that attention automatically converts into value, and Angel Reese has become the clearest walking example of what happens when that math does not quite check out.
This is one thing you like to see. Post here some work in the gym. Nobody's pretending it didn't happen. We all know exactly why they lost. And so does she. My uncle just texted me to say she's still in the gym shooting, and he can't go home till everybody's out. It's just him, her, and her bodyguards. She knows we all know, and the Aces better know it. So they asked his coach, did we see them in the playoffs again? And this is the best thing that you want to see from a player in this scenario.
She can sell a doll faster than Mattel can restock the shelves, and she can turn a random Monday night downtown into a sold-out sea of pink without breaking much of a sweat. What nobody around her has figured out yet is how to turn any of that hype into a building that actually looks full on a quiet Wednesday, when there are no towels being waved, no glitter bar on the concourse, and no cameras looking for anything except the basketball game itself. Until that changes, every time the league calls one of her home games a sellout, somebody is going to point a camera at the empty blue seats behind the basket and let the picture argue the point for them. Attention itself has become easy to manufacture, since a doll, a rivalry, or a themed night with pink lighting and a glitter bar can move 17,000 tickets almost on demand, and there is real money built into that formula. Turning that same attention into a fan base that shows up for the basketball itself on a random Wednesday with no gimmick attached is a much harder and much slower project, and it is the one nobody around Angel Reese has cracked yet. Whether she ends up remembered as the player who finally solved that problem or the player who accidentally exposed it is still an open question, and it is one worth watching closely, because the answer says less about her than it does about the league she keeps insisting she carries.